Holy Toledo, ladies and gentlemen, just got out of the theater to the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan. Got to give you an instant reaction. Luke Mayo here, by the way, one half of Movie Chumps. I believe at this moment, Corrye is probably in his car or his driveway, giving you guys an instant reaction as well. So we'll put that on YouTube, so make sure you check that out. I loved this puppy. 75 to 80% of this film, absolutely enthralling, riveting, pulse pounding. The other 20 to 25%, I had some issues with, kind of in a funny way. But hey, that's all right. Think about your favorite athlete, your favorite team. Sometimes they have a bad first quarter. Doesn't mean they have a bad game. That was the case here. I think Nolan had a bad first quarter. Doesn't mean it was a bad film overall. It was a great film. But man, that first half hour, we'll start with some of the negatives here. Didn't connect, is the way, Corrye, my partner in crime, put it, out of the theater. And I don't think it was a personal thing with him. I think it was the movie didn't connect, I think, with viewers. I don't think Nolan knew how to get into this movie, right? Here's one of the most ancient tales of all time. How do you begin this thing? How do you kick this thing off? I think Nolan struggled with that. I think the chemistry wasn't there with some of the actors. There was too much exposition, too much explaining. It felt like these actors had never delivered lines before. There was just something odd about it. I don't want to say awkwardly delivered, but I think maybe that's the best way to put it. But once this thing gets cooking, this thing really rock and rolls. I mean, there's about 4 or 5 encounters in this film. This is probably the number one takeaway for me in terms of positivity. There's 4 or 5 encounters in this film, or we should say chapters, if you will, where Odysseus and his crew are taking on some, iconic creatures, and you're on the edge of your seat. I know Corrye was. He jumped a couple times, including one particular point in the film where we'll get to next week when we cover this film on the pod. The whole theater was locked in. We were all watching hard, as our buddy Robert Meyer Burnett likes to say, from Robservations, another good YouTube channel. But yeah, this thing had a little bit of everything. I mean, there was some romance there. There was some, of course, action adventure, but there was a lot to say in terms of, loyalty, revenge, war. There was some classic, decisions that Odysseus had to make that really had you thinking about what does it mean to be a leader. I think overall, this was, for me anyway, not top 3 Nolan in terms of my favorites. I think I still like Dark Knight, Batman Begins, weirdly. Oppenheimer, I still think is his magnum opus. I think that first half hour really may have hurt the film in terms of the film's legacy overall. But this thing moved. It was around 3 hours. It weirdly felt longer, like it was 4 or 5 hours, but not in a bad way. You were into it. You felt exhausted by the time Odysseus gets home. And man, that final act, that third act, where he does return to Ithaca, to Penelope, to Telemachus. You can't wait for revenge to be taken. So I'm going to give this a solid 8.5 out of 10. I think you got to see it in the theater before you watch it in your home theater, before you see it on your living room, before you watch it on your phone. The Game Boy screen, of course. But yeah, I think you're going to have a riot with this one. Again, some of the dialogue a little jangly, a little awkward, but the performances were fun. Some of the decisions that Nolan made in terms of casting, I thought were really fascinating. I don't see the big deal with, I thought Lupita Nyong'o just didn't have a lot of airtime, a lot of screen time. I don't think they showcased her as well as they could have. She is absolutely gorgeous. And of course, if you're Helen of Troy, like, that should be a thing that you showcase. I think they kind of played that down maybe a little bit. The whole Elliot Page controversy. No, they're not playing Achilles, as some of the rumors said. Dude, I didn't even see Achilles in here unless it was like a bit part, which was weird. Corrye and I talked about that out of the theater as well. So no Achilles appearance. Agamemnon had like this Darth Vader-esque performance played by one of the Safdie brothers, I believe, Ben. So yeah, there's a lot to like here. There's a lot to get into. We're going to get into it next week on the Movie Chumps pod. Luke Mayo signing off on this gorgeous Friday night here in Rochester, New York. Go check out Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, a pure delight.